to that later. Good, then thank you for joining. Welcome to my webinar. This is today about coping with grief and maybe a different and more unconventional way to deal with it. But you will see how everything connects actually. So, what to expect in my webinar? Wait a second. Yeah, all right. So we go through what grief and the process of grieving has to do with stress and stress coping mechanisms. We talk about the mind-body connection as well in terms of emotional regulation. And in the end, I give you some practical coping techniques, how to deal with it. And exactly, some individual stress management strategies. So about me, just quickly, I'm a therapist for health promotion. I studied in Germany. That's where I come from, actually. I live in Stockholm since 6 years now, and I'm mainly specialized in health coaching with specialization in mind-body connection and stress management, actually. So now you might wonder why grief. Well, I noticed that a lot of my clients actually deal with very difficult emotions in general, and grieving is basically nothing else than a very difficult emotion. And we work with emotional regulations, so I found that the work I do in stress management, including emotional regulation, works very well also in the grieving process. But of course, not for everyone. So this seminar will give you an overview about different options, and you can decide then, of course, on your own, which is most helpful for you. So we start with the cost of avoidance. Of course, this is, I guess, the most common thing to do for most people, that they try to avoid the difficult feelings they have. This has physical, psychological, and other difficult consequences if you just suppress your feelings. This might work for the moment, and it works for many people, but usually it always comes back to you at some point. Because what happens in general when you suppress emotions is that you feel basically everything you feel also when you're chronically stressed, which is chronic exhaustion, for example, sleeping disorders, weak immune system as well. In a psychological term, you might face depression at some point, anxiety, emotional numbness. This is what happens a lot and causes then, of course, as well, problems in your relationships when you're emotional numb. Social isolation happens as well, that people isolate themselves because they can't really socialize with other people anymore because it's exhausting. Or also a really very common way to go to is using substances or alcohol to numb yourself. Also, basically all sorts of addictions, if that is a drug, alcohol, work, sex, or excessive media consumption. So all these things are very commonly used just to distract, that you don't need to deal with your emotions or to numb yourself. So this is what most people do. And as I said, short term, this might help. But on the long run, so if you feel after a few months or even years that it's still like coming back to you and that you feel all the symptoms basically I just said, then this might be a sign that you did not properly cope with your feelings, that you did not actually work with it and work through and grieved in a proper way. So of course this always depends on your very individual resilience. The higher your stress resilience is, the better you can cope with the emotional feelings as well. So the higher your emotional regulation is as well. It both does not depend on each other, but it affects each other. So if you have already naturally a good resilience, then of course things might go faster and you can easily cope with these feelings. But some people are not very resilient, and in addition, they have never learned how to cope with their emotions. So this is also something this is called learned behavior, right? So when you grew up in a family where this was never really a topic, that was never really, you were never really taught how to, yeah, express your feelings and that you're allowed actually to express them. I think a lot of people, especially also in my age, they grew up in families where this was not really a thing. You said, yeah, no, your parents said, yeah, get over it, or we have a German saying, as in Indiana, kennt keinen Schmerz. So, yeah, you should just get over it. So this is very, very often happened. And this way, you never learn how to really, yeah, deal with your emotions, difficult emotions, anger, and yeah, sadness, and yeah, even happiness. So yeah, there are different ways to cope with grief in a traditional way. So this might be the methods you might already know, or you know from therapists or whatever. The most popular or the most known, I guess, is the Kubler-Ross model, which is very often used in movies and stuff as well. You have the 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, which basically just describes the phases you go through when you grieve. But this is also not, it's not working for everyone. It's not linear, so it doesn't have a specific order. You don't even need to go through all these phases. So sometimes you go just through 1 or 2. So this is also very individual. The same with the Warden is also a model. This is more focusing on stages. So it's more a processing model, an active process. So you accept the loss, you process the pain, you adjust a new reality, and establish new relationship with the lost. So this is a different way to cope with it than Strube and Schott. I'm not sure about the pronunciation. I'm sorry. It's a dual process model, basically. So you are shifting between loss-oriented and restoration-oriented coping. So this is a bit, yeah, back and forth movement. This is also typically used in therapy, and class is basically, so the idea behind that is that the relationship with the deceased is transformed, so it never really ends, because a lot of people, of course, have the most problem with this, yeah, that it's just so definite, that it's so, yeah, yeah, that you just have to stop, that it doesn't continue. So this is the idea behind it. So as you see, this is a very individual. So not everything works for everyone, of course. So there is no silver bullet solution for everyone. Grief is as individual as a person itself. And most importantly, grief takes time. And it takes as much time as you need. This is the most important. And this is also what I found in my own work with this topic. So a lot of people think there must be a particular time frame, like how long does it take to process that? How long does it take to get over it? Also a typical phrase, get over it, or let go. It doesn't really matter, because it just takes as long as it takes. And I had a client who, after 3 years, was still regularly in situations where she was emotionally overwhelmed by difficult emotions, just completely like sort of panic attacks. And she said, it's 3 years ago, so when does it finally end? But this shows you that the time frame is not, set in stone. It's not. There is no specific time. It is very individual, and in this case, she started to suppress the emotion and just distracted herself all the time, and this is why it just prolonged. So you can't really, the longer you suppress your emotions or you distract or whatever you do, the longer it takes, of course. And also, I think we need to, redefine the words letting go and getting over it. Honestly, from my perspective, that will never happen because we do not actually want to get over it or let it go. A lot of people even have a problem with this word letting go because they do not want to let the person they loved go, which I totally understand. So it's more like you keep this person in your memory, in your heart, and it will maybe always hurt. But the most important thing is that you are able to dose your emotions, that you do not get consumed by them. And this is the most important part. And this is, for example, where I work with as well. So then you come at maybe at some point where you ask yourself, okay, when is the point where I need help? And there are different options. So there are people, professionals who can help you with that. Of course, you can have a normal psychotherapy. There are psychotherapists that are specialized in grief. Then there are grief counselors. Then there are coaches who are working with grief, like me, for example. Or there are, of course, several self-help groups you might have seen as well. So there are different ways, or some people go to church, for example, and seek help in faith, basically, which is also totally fine. So it depends really on the person. What do they want? What do they need? And I would always say, because I am now a coach, but coaching never replaces a therapy. This is I want to say clearly. It does not, but it depends, of course, where are you in your grieving process? Like, are you close to suicide? Then I would always recommend go to therapy. Like these are really severe symptoms. When you have a very severe depression for a long time, these are always indicators where you would think, okay, I should go to a therapist, definitely. Or if you use substance on a regular as a coping strategy, or you have, just complicated and very severe symptoms, then I always would say, okay, go to therapy. But there are a lot of people, of course, who also think, okay, I don't think I need therapy for that. Maybe it's just mild, let's say, but still you struggle. Of course you struggle, even no matter if it's mild or if it's medium or severe. So whenever you feel okay, you just feel you don't have more severe problems that are really physical already and dangerous actually, then you technically can do it on your own. There are different methods you can use. I'll show you some in this webinar. Or as said, you can get help from a non-therapist, from a counselor, from church, from a coach. This is usually what people do when they do not want to go to therapy, and it's working quite well. Also, to be honest, if you want to go this way with a different way, with not therapy, these people can also, of course, help you to find out if a therapy is necessary, because this is, a process, and this you can find out only after a while if you're not sure yourself. So, grief as emotional stress. Regulation is key here, as I said. So that is why I use this approach, stress management, as I explained, because of the emotional regulation part in the stress management. So the problem is that the people have fear, or they have anxiety, or they're scared basically of the intensity of the pain, which is totally normal. And also they have, yeah, they are uncertain maybe about the experience of the emotions. Maybe they have never done that before. They don't know exactly how to do it. Also, they might fear that they lose control when they accept or, yeah, feel their emotions. Also, a lot of people actually don't really know how to do it, as I said. If they never learned it, they don't know. Nowadays, of course, there's a lot out of in social media and everywhere, especially in terms of educating kids nowadays. So this is a whole new world now where you actually teach your kids, right? You might have seen that, everyone has seen that, to let their emotions out and to feel their emotions, accept their emotions, and yeah, every emotion is just okay. So this is like the common sense nowadays for children. But the problem is here as well, if the parents have never learned that, how to do it exactly, it's hard to teach the children as well. So the solution is basically allow your emotions and dose them, as I said that. So we need to come to a point where we understand and gain control over the emotions, because very often they are just coming towards us like a tsunami. And this is exactly where you need to work with that. The emotions, you see the emotions, you recognize them, you feel them, but you can also, you know exactly, I can get out of this. This is not killing me. Because this is very, yeah, you have to understand the process in your brain. It's exactly the same thing that happens when you are in chronic stress or in a chronic or in a stress uh, reaction in general, in a stressful situation. So what happens? Your body thinks it's gonna die because your brain doesn't make a difference if there is someone trying to kill you or if there is just emotional pain. There's really no difference. Your brain always thinks, okay, this is a life-threatening situation, and that's why your body prepares for fight and flight. So we all have heard about that, right? So you are stuck in that survival mode. And with grief, it can happen that this event is maybe so traumatic that you get stuck in one of the stress responses called freeze. And freeze, as the name says, you are stuck, you freeze, you are basically paralyzed, and your brain gets stuck in this high stress level and in this survival mode and with all these difficult emotions. So every time just a small thing triggers you, it gets back into that state immediately. And that is why it's so overwhelming. And that is why we feel, yeah, we don't really have control, because this is even some sort of trauma response if that happens. But of course, not every loss causes a trauma. It's just to explain how things work in the brain. So grief activates the stress response, and that is why it causes also symptoms like the same like you have when you have chronic stress, a high cortisol level, all these things I just explained. Then the body stores emotion. This is also yeah, not really a new theory, but something that is more widespread nowadays, that the body stores emotion. This is also scientifically proven, actually, that really emotions can get stuck into the body and cause physical pain, like muscle tension or, yeah, just pain. And this is really happening. So that is why you can work with that, you know, on the other side. So when you know this is stuck in your body, you can actually work with your body to release the emotions. There are different techniques you can use. There are different people who work with that, but usually this is mind-body medicine. So the connection between mind and body is so important, especially because of that I just said. It's emotions get stuck in the body, but also, your brain needs to learn how to cope with these things, how to cope with the emotional overwhelm. So there are different techniques I use in stress management, which are especially helpful to regulate your nervous system, to calm your nervous system, that it gets out of this survival mode, which makes it easier for you to take control over your emotions. Apart from that, just a side note, like mindfulness, for example, of course, everyone have heard about it. If you practice mindfulness, and it doesn't really need to be like 1 hour a day or something, just 10 minutes every day, mindfulness, if that is a meditation or if it's just mindful actions like brushing teeth or whatever, just mindfulness, be in the moment. That can transform, like if you do that every day, 10 minutes over 6 weeks, this is scientifically proven to literally transform the structure of your brain and the gray matter. And this is responsible for emotional regulation. So if you, just to show you how powerful like really small tools out of stress management are. So practicing mindfulness in general helps you to regulate your emotions, just a side note. So there are different breathing techniques. Almost all of these techniques I tell you now are somehow connected to mindfulness, by the way. So breathing, the only response in our body when we have an intense stress response. So we can't really control the heartbeat, we can't control the muscle tension, right? So all these things happen automatically when we are in a survival mode. The only thing we can control is actually our breathing. So that is why breathing techniques help so much to calm your nervous system very quickly, to stimulate the vagus nerve. You have also already heard about it. Vagus nerve is one of the biggest nerves in the nervous system, in a parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and digest. So this is for calming down. There are some techniques like the box breathing, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold, and the 4-7-8 technique, which are particularly helpful in stressful situations, so also in emotionally overwhelming situations. So the 4-7-8 is basically 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, and 8 counts out. This instantly works on your nervous system and calms you down, so you have a better ability to control things. Then body scan and somatic experience. This is the type of mind-body treatment I was talking about. So this is basically, body scan is a mindfulness meditation. And in some treatments I offer, for example, I combine this with somatic experience from trauma therapy. So it is basically, you can check that on Spotify, for example. Just type in body scan and you will find a guided meditation. Very helpful. So you go through different body parts and just focus and breathe with a different body part. So mindfulness exercise. And somatic experience is basically that you get access to underlying or suppressed or stuck emotions through your body. So you first focus on what's happening in your body, because maybe also a side note, a lot of people who are emotionally overwhelmed, who are in the survival mode, they tend to dissociate and to leave their body. Basically they disconnect to their body. So it really happens that some people cannot really feel their body. Like when I was working with a client, I did this treatment with a body scan and a somatic experience. And what you do is usually, like, I ask them, what do you feel in your body? And like the first 2-3 times she could not feel anything at all, which was very uncommon, because if I do that with other clients who have different problems, they usually feel their body. But this is how you can see that sometimes it's even for those people who are so emotionally overwhelmed, who have difficult feelings, and maybe even have traumatic events, they disconnect to their body. So that's why it's so important to reconnect. That also mindful movements, for example, like yoga and Tai Chi, also helps if you do it right. So always pay attention that you really do it correctly, because you can do yoga and miss the good effect actually. So yoga is also about mindfulness. Be mindful and focus on your breathing and really on everything you do. Then writing helps, of course, as well, especially in terms of identifying your feelings. So how to process feelings is, first of all, you need to recognize them, right? And then you need to identify them. And that is one of the most difficult parts, I think, because it's hard sometimes to name what you actually feel, especially when you have never really worked with that before. So I would recommend the wheel of feelings. You can Google for that. Just print it out and put it somewhere. And every time you get overwhelmed, just try to find out what this feeling exactly is. Because grief is not really a feeling, right? So what you feel is mostly anger, frustration, sadness. So there can be various feelings involved in the grief process. And that is the second step. Just name your emotions. That is very important. And then you are already a big step further. And then just sit with it and accept it. Acceptance is so important as well. Write them down. And like, for example, expressive writing, like I said here, 20 minutes of free writing about your feelings, also really scientifically proven reduces stress hormones and promotes the whole grieving process. So just writing things down, or if you're ready, a lot of people are not, because it might be very painful, just write a letter to the person you have lost. That helps as well. But it depends on the stage where you are in. That is very sensitive, of course. So now I mentioned acceptance is very important as well. That's why my work coaching is based also on ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. So it's basically we work to accept our grief, to accept the time it takes, and accept that we feel pain. So just really, and sometimes it's very interesting that it's so hard to give yourself permission for that. Sometimes it's really so helpful if a third person comes in and just tells you it's okay. You are allowed to feel that, you know? So permission and accepting the feelings is a big, big step in the grieving process. Instead of fighting your feelings, because a lot of people just try, as I said in the beginning, suppress and fight against it. I don't want these feelings. They're uncomfortable and I just don't want to feel so miserable, which is, of course, understandable, but it doesn't help in the process. We need to give ourselves permission and space to let all the feelings happen that are there. And sometimes it's helpful to have a third person to give you this permission. So then the act also includes, of course, value clarification. So what gives you meaning in life? So coaching therapy is mainly inwards and backwards directed. So working through the past and stuff, and processing things, and coaching is mainly outwards and forward. So focusing on the future, focusing on the things that gives you meaning in life, and then making a plan going forward in your life, how to achieve that and to accompany you on this way. My work specifically is a little bit a mix of both. Depends on the problems, of course, but sometimes we also go deeper into emotions and emotional regulation and like working through things that might have happened in the past. So good. And this is ACT, as I said, the acceptance commitment therapy. So now we're already at the end. I hope I could give you a little bit good input, maybe something you did not know yet. That would be great. I hope you gained some insights, and So what I can offer you now, of course, is take this information and try to do it on your own, which is totally possible. If you really do the work and try different approaches, not everything works, as said. Otherwise, if you think you might need help with that in the process and someone who keeps you on track or someone who gives you permission, you can totally reach out to me. What I offer now is a 30-minute analyzing talk to see where are you in the process, which help is best for you, which way to go, and so on. This is totally non-binding and free of charge. So if you want to make use of that, that would be great. Then just scan this QR code and agree on book a time. Or just send me a message in the Meetup app, also totally fine.